On page 42, now he's talking about other groups and more individualist cultures versus more collectivist cultures, and I think it's pretty interesting. So he says, the ideal of self-advancement which the civilizing West offers to backward populations brings with it the plague of individual frustration. All the advantages brought by the West are ineffectual substitutes for the sheltering and soothing anonymity of a communal existence. Even when the westernized native attains personal success, becomes rich, or masters a respective profession, he is not happy. He feels naked and orphaned. So I thought this was pretty interesting, and this is definitely an issue right now with all kinds of Western countries and how they interact and deal with their what are more politically correct now called indigenous populations. And that, of course, is happening in Canada, and it is often a political issue that comes up every election. And basically, the issue surrounds how should the government manage or pay for the life of Native Canadians or Indigenous Canadians. And so, what Hoffer is saying here is that these cultures are collectivist, that they have no meaning. Those human beings, Indigenous human beings, have no meaning unless they promote or are a part of a group, and the group's advancement or the group's prizes and productiveness and things that they do, things that they accomplish, is the only route to those individuals that comprise the group feeling any kind of success or purpose. Now, first of all, that seems like an insanely racist comment. And there are plenty of indigenous-born people that escape reserves and live a far better life than those who stay on reserves. There are people that want to live in, quote, the old way, unquote. But there are plenty, of course, who don't. So I don't think that cultures can be individualist versus collectivist. There are certainly people who want to be individualist or collectivist, and I think that those two ways of living, I guess, correlate with other qualities, such as individualists tend to be ambitious, collectivists tend to be non-ambitious. And there's all kinds of other examples. But I don't think that can be labeled on West versus what? What are these people? They're not East, so what would you call them? So I think that is not quite right, but I can understand some of those cultures. For a long time, they've had this view of that their identity is wrapped, and their identity it's already made for them, and they're expected to fall in line. And I think that actually happens. It's funny, up in Canada, we complain, well, there's once in a while you hear stuff about what are called residential schools. These were schools that were largely religious schools that were set up for Native kids. And these kids would go to these schools and learn English and learn Western ways of civilized behavior and things like that. And this was later criticized. This was over the 20th century. And this was, like in the last few decades, criticized as being awful and as being, destroying their culture. There was one judge up here that called it cultural genocide, which is such a stupid remark to compare this to an actual genocide. So that woman judge got chastised for that, which is rightly so. But these schools apparently were destroying their culture and all that. And again, this is another racist, stupid comment, because these kids, why is it that if you're born in a certain culture or have a certain race or a certain family lineage or bloodline, that gives you some kind of destiny that you have to fulfill? That if you're born in a certain place, you're expected to keep that place and try to promote that place. Like, what nonsense. It's a free country. It doesn't matter what your family genetics are. You can do whatever you want. You're not destined to be an indigenous kid and live an indigenous life with an indigenous culture and an indigenous wife or husband and indigenous kids. Like, it's just such nonsense. So, anyways, Hoffer's point here is that if indeed there's a culture and a people that are by genetics and by it's just embedded in their brain, they can't get out of it. If they are collectivists, then necessarily when they interact with a more individualist culture, then yes, it is true what he says, that the ideal of self-advancement which the civilizing West offers to backward populations, brings with it a plague of individual frustration. Yes, I agree, but I don't think that those exist. I don't think you have groups of people that are just alien, that can only function in a group. I don't agree that that is a human quality.